China's military is surging past its normal maritime spheres deep into the Pacific Ocean. Western allies have called these moves provocative and a wake-up call. Well, Sean Durns, Washington, D.C. based foreign affairs analyst, joins us now. So, Sean, what is China up to and why are Western allies sounding the alarm?
Well, thanks for having me on, Raj. China is, by all accounts, I think it's fair to say, preparing for war. China is looking to invade Taiwan. Chinese President Xi Jinping has stated that the People's Liberation Army needs to be ready to invade Taiwan by 2027. He seeks to reunify, in his words, Taiwan with the mainland. So China is preparing for war. And this is, of course, a cause of great concern to the United States and its allies.
So, Sean, you've written extensively about China. I want to read you something from the Wall Street Journal about this maneuver that Chinese naval ships did around Australia, which is obviously very far from the South China Sea. Quote, "The issue is not that they have increasing blue water capabilities and are deploying further from their coast. That's to be expected," said Jennifer Parker, an adjunct fellow in naval studies at the University of New South Wales. Quote, here it is. "The issue is the nature in which they are doing it, which is provocative." So it sounds like they're almost trying to pick a fight. Why are Chinese naval ships sailing around Australia? What's going on?
China is demonstrating its military might. Chinese military capabilities have grown exponentially over the last 2 decades in particular. And so right now, China is showcasing its capabilities, which are considerable. China's been steadily building. They have more than 200 times our own shipbuilding capacity. And they are building underground hospitals. They're building their version of a Pentagon, which is actually going to be 10 times larger than our Pentagon. And they have constructed more than 130 air bases within 1,000 nautical miles off of Taiwan. So China, I think it's fair to say, is preparing for war. You don't expend this amount of money and time and effort without reason. History is clear on that point.
I don't assume that you have a crystal ball, but let's say that they actually follow through on that and do invade Taiwan, or at least, there's some military action. Where does that leave the United States? What can your average Joe here in the States, what should we be thinking about when we see China's, again, provocative movements in the Pacific Ocean?
It's an extremely perilous situation. Unfortunately, our supply chains are very reliant on China. We've never been as a nation in this position before, where we rely on our foremost foe. The Pentagon has called China our sole pacing challenge, our sole competitor, for basic needs. For example, blood pressure meds, birth control medications, a long list of regular, average, everyday pharmaceutical needs, other supply chain needs, including that are used by our military. It's all reliant on China. And this is unprecedented. In previous circumstances where we faced Nazi Germany, Imperial Japan, the Soviet Union, et cetera, our supply chains were never reliant on them. And so this is really, really dangerous. It's something that should be of grave concern to Americans and American policymakers.
So, Sean, again, you are an expert in this subject. And I think for a lot of folks, they see these moves and they're kind of trying to make sense of it. But then you see these other articles basically talking about how China is literally making islands in the ocean, which almost seems, hard to believe. Can you maybe give us an example or paint an accurate depiction of what this immense project that China is undertaking right now?
It is a tremendous project, and it's one that China's been laser focused on for decades. Mao Zedong, shortly after winning the Chinese Civil War in 1949, immediately began talking about Taiwan. Of course, at the time, his foremost foe had fled to Taiwan, but it's been a priority for the Chinese Communist Party for years, and they've been laser focused on it. One thing that I think is worth noting, when we had our own global war on terror, as it was called, China called that a period of strategic opportunity. So while we were focused on the Middle East and elsewhere, China remained focused on shoring up its defense needs and capabilities and eventually seizing Taiwan.
So, when it comes to what is Iran's goal, for example, they say openly death to America, death to Israel. It's based on Shia Islam. When you want to know what, name the organization or country, they're kind of overt about it. What is the goal of the Chinese Communist Party, right? What is the goal of Xi Jinping? Is it simply to reclaim Taiwan? Is there some global strategy at play? People again make statements like Erdogan wants to, reclaim the Ottoman Empire, Putin wants to recreate the Soviet Union, and it's kind of a little hearsay. What, as an expert, what does the Communist Chinese Party ultimately want?
They want to be the sole global power. They want the United States and its allies to be subservient to them, and they seek global hegemony, flat out. They want to be the sole superpower, and they want the U.S., its allies, Western Europe, to effectively bow down before their version of the Middle Kingdom. And they seek hegemony not only in the region, not only in the Indo-Pacific, but beyond. And we know this because, of course, they have bases in Africa. They've increasingly become involved in the Middle East. So they want to be the global power, not a global power, which they already are, but the global power.
Well, from an American perspective, maybe last question, what should we be looking out for? Obviously, our allies, South Korea, Japan, all in the area, Taiwan. As an American, what should we be looking out for that could potentially drag us into a conflict in Asia?
Unfortunately, there's a lot of fault lines here. So there's numerous possibilities, unfortunately. I think that, Douglas MacArthur, the late general, famously said that Taiwan was an unsinkable aircraft carrier. So Taiwan is in the first island chain. If that were to go, and if China was to successfully take over Taiwan, you would see American allies in the region potentially begin to hedge. They would certainly begin to increase their defense expenditures rapidly, as would the United States. So it would be a really perilous situation should that occur, and our priority should be deterring that from happening. Letting China know that this is not something that is in its interests or in our interests.
Well, Sean, I appreciate your time, my friend.
Thank you very much, Raj.